Hello once again and welcome to another episode of Euroman Movie Report. And you have to excuse me, I sound a bit different than I usually do, but that's because I have a cold. But with that out of the way, this is my review of Abraham Lincoln Vampire Hunter, the movie. A couple of years ago, when this book here by Seth Graham Smith was released, I bought and read this book because I found it to be interesting premise. I found it to be an interesting premise, and especially the ending. And the ending, it says, on August 28th, 1963, Henry Sturgis stood in front of the Lincoln Memorial, his clothing and hair in keeping with the times, a black umbrella protecting his skin and dark glasses covering his eyes. He was accompanied by an uncommonly tall friend, his eyes behind a pair of Ray-Bans, his shoulder-length brown hair beneath a floppy-brimmed hat. A bushy beard obscured his angular face, the same one staring down at him from the marble throne, and causing him no shortage of discomfort. Both listened intensely, proudly, as a young black preacher looked out on more than 250,000 faces. 50 years ago, the preacher began. A great American, in those symbolic shadow we stand, signed the Emancipation Proclamation. This monumentous decree came as a great beacon light of hope to millions of Negro slaves who had been seared in flames of withering injustice. It came as joyous daybreak to the end the long night of captivity. But 100 years later, we must face the tragic fact that the Negro is still not free. Abe and Henry had come to help finish the work began a century before. They had been there doing reconstruction, driving out vampires who continued to terrorize emancipated slaves. I have a dream that one day on the red hills of Georgia, the sons of former slaves and the sons of former slave owners will be able to sit down together at a table of brotherhood. They had been there in Mississippi, dragging white-hooded devils to their deaths by the lights of burning crosses. Now it's time to make justice a reality for all God's children, and they had been there in Europe, where millions gave their lives, defeating the Second Vampire Uprising between 1939 and 1945. But there was still work to be done. Free at last! Free at last! Thank God Almighty, we are free at last! The crowd cheered wildly, and the preacher took his seat. It was a perfect late summer day, a defining day in man's struggle for freedom. Not unlike the day Abraham Lincoln was laid to rest 98 years before, the day Henry made a choice that some men are just too interesting to die. And that's how Abraham Lincoln, the book, Abraham Lincoln Vampire Hunter, the book ends. And instead of keeping that great ending, they choose to make a very shitty ending, in my opinion, where they had Abraham Lincoln and Mary Todd traveling to Ford's Theatre, and then the scene cuts to modern times, and we see Henry Sturgis sitting in a bar, like earlier in the movie, and this guy wants to go out and kill something, and when Henry Sturgis says to this guy that, like he said to Abraham Lincoln earlier in the movie, if you are drinking that much, then you either want to ask a girl for a date or want to kill a man. And then the guy Henry Sturgis talks to, he drops the gun, and then the movie ends. And I don't know why they chose that over the ending of the book. And what puzzles me the most is that the script for the movie was supposedly written by Seth Graham Smith, the guy who wrote the book. So how in God's name he could write such a crappy version of his own book for a movie script, that's beyond me. And to sum up Abraham Lincoln Vampire Hunter, the movie, compared to the book, if you have this fine wine, and if you if you pour a lot of water into this wine, and eventually this wine will stop being a wine, and maybe it will still look like a wine, but it's not a wine. And that's what this movie is like, that they took a fun and interesting concept from this book here and turned it into, yeah, a shadow of what it could have been, and that's a shame. And they watered down everything, like how Henry Sturgis and younger Abraham Lincoln, they meet. They watered down the backstory of Henry Sturgis. They completely erased the interesting backstory in the book. Henry Sturgis was supposedly one of the settlers at the time of the Mayflower, and the reason why he was turned into a vampire was that the doctor on board the settler ship which Henry Sturgis and his wife traveled on, he was a vampire, and in some time Henry Sturgis, he's supposedly British, and sometime after they have landed in the New World, the United States, what becomes the United States, this vampire doctor attacks the other settlers and turns Henry into a vampire. All that was magically thrown out of the movie and replaced by something very idiotic, where we have Henry telling Abe that he was in a carriage with his wife, and then some of the stooges of Adam, the vampire lord, attacks Henry and his wife, and killing his wife and turning Henry into a vampire. And what was, when you have read the book here, replacing that that interesting backstory for Henry Sturgis with something as crappy as the part they went for in the book, I don't know, in the movie, that was totally pointless to even have Henry Sturgis' background recollected when they had chosen something so silly compared to what happened in the book. And yeah, the movie of course is directed by the guy who directed Wanted. I just have to find his name here. Excuse me. Just opened IMDb. It's Timur Bekmambetov. His name is Timur Bekmambetov. Timur Bekmambetov. He directed a couple of years ago the fast-paced action movie Wanted, starring among others Angelina Jolie and Morgan Freeman, and that was an okay movie. But if you have seen his non-English language films, like the movie he's mostly known for, which is non-English language, is the Russian vampire werewolf movie Night Watch. And Night Watch, the fight scenes in Night Watch, if you have seen that film, it's like he is taking some of the choreography of the fight scenes in Night Watch and inserted them into Abraham Lincoln Vampire Hunter. And Timur, he has a fetish for Matrix style speed up and slow down effects, and they seemed a bit idiotic in Abraham Lincoln Vampire Hunter. The best thing about Abraham Lincoln Vampire Hunter was, of course, the vampire effect. That was, I must say, the best vampire effect I have seen in a while. But the acting in Abraham Lincoln Vampire Hunter, it was fairly mediocre, and I had expected more, but I was really disappointed. It seemed that the acting, it didn't rise up over the level of expensive fan flick, and that was very disappointing. The guy who played the character which was made up for the movie, Rufus Sewell, who played the Vampire Lord, Adam, he did the best he could with his role, and his acting was fairly good. But what I didn't get about his character was, of course, why did he sometimes sound like a southerner, and other times he sounded like something else. I don't know if it was bad direction or something like that, but that was a bit confusing in my opinion. And the editing, the whole thing, it's a total mess. And and the whole scene about the fight scene between Lincoln and the vampire who killed Lincoln's mother, them jumping from horse to horse, it was totally pointless, and it took up way too much of the movie. I don't know if there exists some additional scenes which could have made this movie better, but maybe they'll release, when this movie comes out on Blu-ray, maybe there exists a better ending of the film than the one which made it to theaters. So I was very disappointed with Abraham Lincoln Vampire Hunter the movie, and very dissatisfied. So yeah, and I could talk about this for hours, but if you want to read the proper story, go out and get the book Abraham Lincoln Vampire Hunter, and it's a fun book, and it takes all these historical events from Lincoln's life and during Lincoln's election campaign and while he's president, and adds the supernatural element. And that's what made this book great, and why they fucked it up, it's beyond me. So maybe it's because they only had $89 million to make this movie, but they should have made someone else, hired someone else to write the script, because Seth Graham Smith, you ruined your own book. That's it. I must say 0 out of 5 Coca-Cola bottles. I'm so angry. This movie sucks. Euroman of Euroman's Movie Report, signing off, and before I'm gonna go out and burn my Abraham Lincoln Vampire Hunter movie ticket, I will just say thank you for watching all my reviews, and I will return in a couple of days with a review of the remake of the old Arnold classic Total Recall, starring Kate Beckinsale and Colin Farrell. So it looks interesting. It looks like they have taken some elements from the first-person shooter Syndicate, but we'll see. I'll return next week. Until then, take care, subscribe or comment if you like this video or any of the other videos on my channel. Have a nice weekend. Bye for now.